So it's up to the group how much you want to get into this new frontier. I'm finding them great fun. I spend endless hours when I should be doing other things like answering my mail, playing with asteroids. One of the most interesting and most exciting of the ones that Al Morrison did has been Icarus. And some of you may have seen the article we did in Our Mutable Dilemma on Icarus. But the first thing that struck me about it, of course the myth is that Icarus and his father Daedalus were imprisoned in the labyrinth in Crete. His father built the labyrinth and then they were imprisoned in it. So they escaped by building wings of wax and flying out to freedom. And Icarus flew too close to the sun, little Greek hubris, and overconfidence, and he got too close to the sun, the wings melted, and he came crashing down and died. So we start any new thing like this with exploring the possibility that it was properly named. So far, of all the ones we've been able to check, they have been properly named. Astronomers haven't missed once of the ones we've been able to check. It's absolutely unbelievable. Because the astronomers who discover them name them. They don't know anything about astrology. They just pick a name out of the sky, and give it to them. And they haven't missed yet. They've been accurate names, the right name for that, to give a clue to the meaning. So Icarus, we start with the assumption that maybe Icarus will be a danger of overreaching, trying to do too much. That's one possibility when we start looking at it. Well, the first things I found with it were a very strange kind of overreach. I found some cases where two people had the Icarus conjunct the other person's Icarus. Their two positions for Icarus were together. And they did things together that neither one would do alone. That was crazy, folie à deux, the French idea. Two people feeding each other's craziness. One of the first cases I came across was that Ronald Reagan and Hinckley have an Icarus conjunction between their charts. And at the time that Hinckley shot him, it was an Icarus return. Transiting Icarus was on both of their Icarus. You can't pluralize Icarus. And at the time of the shooting, transiting Icarus was on the 7th house cusp within minutes, less than a degree, on the 7th house cusp, opposite the ascendant, which is the open enemy attack, conflict. Icarus was in that position when Hinckley shot him, to the minute. When Reagan was inaugurated, Icarus was on the midheaven within a degree, and natally he has it widely conjunct his sun. This is an Icarus administration, no question about it. An Icarus president and an Icarus administration, for whatever that means.
Trying to be more than possible.
When you find stuff like that on your own, are you a quiet excitement or do you jump up and down and throw it?
Boy, it's very excited, but I don't always throw things. I just like tell people about it and write about it. We write about it in our journal. We're doing most issues of the journal ever since for a year and a half. We've been put a new asteroid in each issue. So another case of Icarus conjunction was Marcia Moore and her husband. Some of you are familiar with Marcia Moore. She's was an astrologer, quite well known, yoga teacher, into the Alice Bailey traditions. In fact, her father is the one who financed Alice Bailey's books, Lucis Trust. And she was married to an MD who was an anesthesiologist, specialized in giving people drugs to put them out for surgery. Of all the people in the world, someone trained in occultism, a natural food fanatic, a vegetarian, health conscious in every step of the way, and a man trained to deal with drugs, you would not think that kind of couple would get into mind-altering drugs. But they started taking ketamine, which is actually a drug used in anesthesia, which gives people a strange experience. And they were taking it almost daily for months, having these far-out experiences, thinking they were visiting the next level of life and all this stuff, and who knows how much is real and how much is fantasy. And she disappeared in January of 1979. Couldn't find any trace of her at all. Just vanished. In March of 81, 2 years later, they found enough of the body in the woods not far from the place home in Washington to identify her. So she'd obviously had died sometime, probably the night she disappeared, very likely froze to death because it was middle of winter in the state of Washington. In the natal charts, they had an Icarus conjunction, the husband and Marcia. Progressed Icarus in Marcia's chart was on her descendant, opposite her ascendant at the time that she disappeared and died. And transiting Icarus had made an Icarus return and was on their natal Icarus at the time the body was discovered. Then I had another case of one of my students who was very much like Marcia in many ways, younger, but into yoga, teaching yoga, vegetarian, mostly, working with astrology, teaching it and doing charts with it. Very spiritual, meditated. She had always said her one absolutely firm moral principle was she would never have anything to do with a married man. She had been married and divorced, but she said she would not have a relationship with a married man. And a married man who had never looked at anyone but his wife, very square, very middle America, very proper, just very traditional middle class, Puritan ethic. And the two of them are having an affair. Both of them very uncomfortable about it. Both of them feeling guilty and irresistibly drawn together. And they have an Icarus conjunction between their charts. And at the time that I was looking at the chart with her, she had a bunch of stuff coming out in progressions, and I didn't know what was going to happen. There's a lot of things going on, including Uranus, Gemini. So I was afraid the whole thing was going to hit the fan. They live in a small Midwestern town. His work is dependent on public approval. If it came out, it would be like, that's the end of you in this town. No career anymore. Instead, what happened was she got sick and very nearly died. At that point, there were other cases with Icarus in individual charts, which are also interesting, which I could go into too, but at that point, I said, now look, this is something more than just an overreach and a fall. And of course, nothing in life can be just negative. I mean, that's assuming negative. It's got to be something more than that. So I started really to say, well, look, what it's got to be is the Leo principle. It's another sun in the chart, or a sun seeker. Because what is Leo? Leo is loving and being loved. And what we're seeing here is this intense emotional attraction to each other, to the point of losing rational perspective. So at this point, I think Icarus is like another sun or like another Leo principle. And the danger is overdoing, too much, excesses, overreach, and another danger is prematurity. Not just too much, but too soon, before you're ready, before you can handle it, before you're grounded in it. But the positive potential is love, creativity, excitement, drama, enthusiasm, the positive side of Leo. And I have seen cases of that where it was people who were very spectacularly successful, prominent, powerful. Interesting. Nixon also has Icarus sun conjunct. Also wide, like Reagan. It's not close, it's wide, but interesting. Drive for the top. And at the time, Eagleton has an Icarus-Saturn conjunction in the sun's house, in the 5th house. And at the time that he was chosen to be vice presidential candidate with McGovern, and then they discovered his mental history, that he'd been in a mental institution, and they dumped him quickly. It was a very Icarus performance, clearly. His progressed ascendant was square the Icarus Saturn, and his progressed midheaven was opposite it. And Agnew has a 1st house Icarus, and his progressed ascendant was conjuncted when he had his little fall and was dumped from being vice president because they found he'd been taking bribes He had to resign the vice presidency.
Are you the only person in the world that has an Icarus ephemera?
Oh no, Al Morrison sells them for whatever. Anybody wants them for $4 each. But no, everybody can have them. We hope to have a more accurate one of these days because it is so fast some of the time. It comes closer to the sun than any other object in the solar system other than comets. It's the only regular asteroid that we know of yet. It's the asteroid that comes closest to the sun, inside Mercury. Which is, of course, why they named it that. So that again fits its pattern. Some more examples. Tons of examples of Icarus. Yes.
I have a couple of questions on something else. Diana was supposed to be the goddess of the moon. Somehow the things that I associate in mythology with Diana have nothing to do with what we commonly associate with the moon itself.
Yes, Diana is one of the